Welcome to week 87 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
This is the world's only Santa Barbara after show. Way after show.
Way after.
I was looking on some website where you can submit your podcasts. And the best category for this podcast turns out to be after show.
Really?
Yeah. That's what got me thinking about that. Make sure our branding says we're an after show, as well as a documentary and a review show. It's 1986, Monday, March 24th. Now, I don't know if it was necessarily this past weekend, back in 1986, but as you'll recall, my friend Mike had told me about this show, Doctor Who, that was on Saturday nights. Sometimes it would start at midnight, and sometimes it would start at 11. Anyway, this one particular Saturday, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was still running, and I was getting very tired, and, Doctor Who got into his TARDIS and flew back to Earth, and I thought, oh no, how long is this next segment going to be? So I ended up going to bed early that night. Well, not early, 2 o'clock, but I had no idea how much was left in the show because they ran, anywhere from an hour to 4 hours sometimes. So I called my friend Mike the next day and he said, "Oh, did you see Doctor Who?" I said, "Well, I saw most of it, I think, but, once he started climbing up that radio telescope, I really couldn't stay awake, so I went to bed." Did anything interesting happen? He said, "Oh yeah, he fell off and died and regenerated into a new body, and he's now being played by the guy from All Creatures Great and Small." So apparently I was 5 minutes away from witnessing my first regeneration. So it was quite a few months, if not years, before I finally was able to see that episode when it came around again in the rotation. Of course, now we have all the DVDs on the bookshelf.
Can watch that over and over again as often as you like, whenever you like.
Yes. Unlike 1986. Now, the interesting thing about 1986 is, in theory, looking back, I probably could have bought a VCR, but it never occurred to me to buy a VCR.
Seemed like cheating, probably.
A lot of people already had VCRs at this time. But, nope, I was audio taping Santa Barbara on my Yorks. Episode 420 of Santa Barbara. Mark says he is disgusted by the sex books that Mary has purchased. Later, Mark calls Janice over and tries to kiss her. She slaps him. He tells her his problem with Mary and that he was just trying to get himself jump-started. So, I don't think Janice was particularly impressed by this.
Yeah, Mark was just a big old buzzkill this episode. He was shaming Mary and pushing her away and trying to bring Janice on board as an ally and ended up, having quite a disturbing exchange with her, really. So I don't think things are going well with Mark right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's ruled out that the medication is causing his problem. So Cruz tells Eden that he and Santana are married. This kind of causes Eden to backpedal a bit on what she was going to tell Cruz. Eden tells Cece and Cruz about Gina. Cece gets the nurse to give him that typewritten letter that are in Eden's things, and when Eden looks at it, she realizes that it has some similarities to the typewritten letters she was getting from her blackmailer around about Christmas time. Mm-hmm. And of course, now she's wondering, could that have been Kirk too? Kirk notes to her later that she didn't mention that she thought she saw someone else in the boathouse, like she had said to him earlier. So she tries to blow that off by saying, I think I was wrong about that.
She's playing things very close to the vest. I notice that, obviously she didn't tell anyone. She hasn't told anyone yet about what Gina told her. Mm-hmm. And, I think she's thinking it could be a lot of... She doesn't want to, I think, let anyone know that this happened, that there was this other component. And I think that's very wise because she doesn't entirely know who to trust or what's going on yet.
Cece checks with Cruz to make sure that he and Eden have said all that needs to be said to each other. I think Cece's hope is that Cruz and Eden will never speak again after today. Kirk tells Eden that they might not believe her if they find Gina dead, that it was just an accident, and Eden realizes this has a very similar sound to the advice that he gave her when Cece's plug was pulled.
Yeah.
And she says to Kirk, and I'm starting to think that maybe I didn't do that either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. She's, maybe should never reveal that that to him if she's hiding the other thing.
She definitely is having less and less patience with Kirk, I would say, and the various things he's telling her. Plus, the other thing to remember is she's not drugged up now like she was before when the whole thing with, Cece's plug being pulled was taking place. She's not really as vulnerable to Kirk's suggestions as she was back then.
Kirk tags along with Cruz as he checks out the boathouse. I was kind of surprised it was Kirk. I thought maybe it was Cece with Cruz, and then when I saw it was Kirk, and they're alone together in the boathouse, and then Kirk pulls out his gun, but he actually hides it so that Cruz can find it to make it more plausible, because if the gun wasn't there and Gina had gone in the drink, it wouldn't make sense for the gun to have vanished. So. Cruz says he's going to have the entire place fingerprinted, which kind of shocks Kirk. I think he's trying to think back to whether he touched anything or not, but he pretty much says, it seems like a waste, we already know everything that happened. Cruz finds a shoe on the beach and tries to get Eden to confirm that it's Gina's. I think maybe it was, but I don't think anyone was able to confirm that. Eden says, I hope Gina's alive so she can tell us what really happened. And Cruz says, didn't you just tell me what really happened? So he's a little bit annoyed now that he realized that Eden is still hiding something.
I think it's, I don't know quite how it would go in this way, but I've certainly seen enough police shows and read enough mystery novels that I think the police tend to find it rather suspicious when someone kind of glues themselves to the police investigation. So I would think that, Kirk thinks he's being very smart, I think, in being close to the investigation, but I think that could definitely raise suspicion, too.
Yeah, Kirk was really suspicious with his dialogue, both to Eden and to Cruz, the whole episode. And to Cece. Cece, found him saying a few odd things, too, during the day. Mary tells Eden about her problems with Mark, and then Eden asks Mary for a favor. And then later, Eden tells Kirk that the doctor has said it's okay for her to go home as long as Mary is her nurse. Now, at first I thought that was just the favor, but as I was writing my summary, I realized what the real favor was. Because Mary tells Kirk, and you should get your stuff together because I need to move you out of Eden's room because she's got to be alone while she's recovering. And it didn't occur to me at the time that Eden had asked Mary to do that. But I thought that was just a hilarious side effect of Eden coming home. But now I realized that Eden has managed to get Kirk out of her bedroom, which is pretty clever.
And actually, this really suits both women quite well at this point because, as you say, Eden gets Kirk out of her bedroom. I think she's getting thoroughly fed up with him anyway, despite all her suspicions about him. And it gets Mary away from Mark, who, as I say, as her relationship with him is not going well, especially the part of it centered on the bedroom. So
we'll probably find her sleeping in the armchair in Eden's room more nights than not.
Yeah, well, it's a big bed, too. They could both sleep in it as well.
They're talking about moving Kirk into Mason's room. Angel wonders if Gina will try to stab him when he's not looking. And Gina says, hey, I cleaned your apartment and I fixed you dinner. What do you think?
Yeah.
Gina hides when Julia shows up. Julia tells Angel she's impressed that he's cleaned up his apartment so well. And that she points out to him that he can't even get into the slightest bit of trouble. This could be problematic since he's harboring a possible murderer or potential murderer. She says that she's lined up 3 job interviews with him for people who think he, I guess know about his situation, but I think he would be a good candidate. So maybe he'll get a job at the casino, and we'll have the whole cast there.
Maybe he and Pearl will end up working together somewhere.
Yeah. I guess if Buzz fired Pearl, maybe there is an opening, and maybe Angel will be working at Buzz's. I mean, it seems, unless they're planning to introduce another restaurant to the show, he's either got to get a job at Buzz's or the casino, I think.
Well, I mean, there is, I assume, still the State Street Bistro and La Mesa, but we don't hear much about them anymore.
Oh, he could work at the Orient Express, too. That's another.
That might be a bit upscale for him.
Or he could work at the Capwell estate. Gina tries to call Haley, but has to hang up when Brandon answers. She thinks if she calls early enough or late enough in the morning, it'll be only Haley who's home. So it was worth a try. So Gina gets Angel to buy her some things, including a wig, so that she can pretend to be Hispanic. That is what I suspect is going on, because when she models the outfit for Angel, she says, "¿Cómo estás, sweetie?"
This is before Twitter.
All right.
So this would not have been as publicly controversial, certainly as it might be now.
Now, I don't know why Gina is going to pretend to be Hispanic. Is she going to pretend to be Santana? Or is this something to get her just to be able to go out in public without being recognized? And why does she have to be Spanish? Because she still kind of looks like Gina, the famous socialite from Santa Barbara.
I'm wondering who she's trying to fool, because I would think, with the wig, everyone in the Capwell house would recognize her. I would hope. This isn't Days of Our Lives where they can just sort of put on a mask and everyone thinks it's a different person.
The only thing I can think is she's going to somehow, want to meet with Brandon somewhere, maybe at the gazebo or something, and people will just think, oh, that's probably just Santana in an outfit that I've never seen Santana in, chatting with Brandon. But then he lives at Santana's house now, so it would be weird they'd be hanging out at the gazebo.
Plus her wig did not look like Santana's hair.
No, it didn't. But it did look Hispanic. So we will see what her plan is. Pearl tells Julia that he got fired, and he ropes her into coming to Nick's place with her, and she thinks he's planning to do something illegal, but he says, no, I'm just going to get some revenge on Dylan. But once there, Julia is mortified when Pearl handcuffs himself to the roulette table and shouts, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears," and proceeds to tell the entire populace of Nick's place that Dylan Hartley fired him, not only from his job at the casino, but also got him fired from his other job at Buzz's. So, the plan being, I guess, just to let everyone know what a jerk Dylan is. Maybe to add a few hundred more people to the potential murder suspects. But, this actually might be, the point of it might be that Pearl will be a suspect, because he's publicly, announced, what Dylan did to him. So if Dylan does show up dead, Pearl may be the first person they come to chat with.
And then his real identity will be revealed.
Bum, bum, bum. Dylan tells him to leave and never come back. So he didn't seem all that put out by the revelation, though, Dylan. It's like, okay, now that's over. It did, although, to be fair, happen over a commercial break. So who knows how many shocked reactions there were from extras that weren't really hired. And the cream of Santa Barbara society weren't actually there today. We didn't see Lionel or Warren or Augusta or most of the usuals there. So it was just the Monday crowd at Nick's place. And that is it for episode 420. We'll be back after we see episode 421. See you then.
Bye-bye.
¿Cómo estás?
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 421 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, March 25th, 1986. Pearl is cooking at Cruz's place, and when Cruz returns home, he asks him if he knows any work for an unemployed waiter/ferryman. Rosa brings over a wedding gift, and you can tell she is angry not to have been invited to Santana's wedding. She's like low-key growling the entire scene, and then when Santana shows up, Santana's got to apologize. Rosa tells Cruz that Haley is moving Kirk's things to Mason's room. So Cruz finds that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Cruz assures Santana that his working on Eden's case won't affect them. Mason encounters Mary crying, and Mason asks her if she would choose him or Mark if she were making the choice today. Of course, she doesn't want to answer that question.
No.
Says it's quite unfair of Mason. I think we'll just have to wait and see how this thing goes with Mark. Gina cuts up her sweatshirt and hides it on the beach so people will think she's dead. Pearl finds it. Angel shows her the newspaper. Cece has offered a $10,000 reward for her capture. She begs him not to turn her in, saying that Brandon will inherit millions someday. She can pay him off. But he says her leg is so bad that she's going to be having to go to the hospital soon, and someone there's going to recognize her and turn her in, so it might as well be him.
Yeah.
Then later we see Angel teaching Gina Spanish. This seems to be part of her scheme to pretend to be Spanish, so we will see where that's going.
Mm-hmm. I always feel with Gina she's got something in mind, so we'll just have to see what it is. And I'm wondering what it will be directed at. I'm wondering if this will be some sort of plot against. CC is always a candidate for her to plot against, but I'm also wondering if perhaps Kirk might be a target, or if she's still mad at Eden. Like, there's all sorts of possibilities, or if this will be directed at Santana.
I mean, she did mention to Angel again that someone's trying to kill her, but won't tell him that it's Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Ted congratulates Santana on her wedding, and she tells him not to tell Brandon yet. Lakin calls Ted, but we do not hear her end of the conversation. He answers the phone at the end of a scene, go to commercial, and then we come back, and he kind of wraps things up and basically ends up telling Haley the conversation that we missed over the commercial break. He tells her that Lakin is still in Tahoe and is taking some classes and has a new job, and the guy she's engaged to sounds nice. And then Haley wonders, why would Lakin call to tell you all that? And Ted says, oh no, I asked her all that. She just called to find out how Eden is.
Now, I was a little confused by this phone call, but, maybe that was just me not paying enough attention. But I had, for some reason, actually thought that Lakin was already married to this guy.
Yeah, I thought so too. So maybe, definitely this, when they said engaged still, I thought, I thought Lionel or Augusta had said something about them being married.
In fact, I actually thought they had gone up to Tahoe for the wedding at one point, the Lockridges. So,
yeah.
I was kind of confused about it. But anyway, Ted seems to have come away from the conversation feeling like she's just kind of about the new guy. Like, he seems to, and maybe he's projecting, but he seems to feel like he's not all that. So who knows? Maybe this will add a bit of spice to a potential triangle with Haley.
But Ted is not Haley's only concern in this episode, because she is spending a lot of it trying to figure out what's going on with Gina. Ted tells Haley that Gina tried to kill Eden, but don't tell anyone, because the police had told the family not to talk about it. Cruz gets the lab reports and finds out that Eden had powder burns, so she, may have been the one who fired the gun. Only Eden's prints were found at the scene. The blood on Eden was Gina's, and the gun is registered to Cece. And I think Cruz immediately thinks, this kind of looks bad for Eden. Which kind of proves Kirk right. It does look bad for Eden.
Yeah, it's not perhaps just Kirk being manipulative, although he doesn't know himself that all of this evidence is actually pointing to Eden. That seems to be just his
I think he was just hoping
manipulation
that nothing
of her.
would turn up to implicate him. So,
but this certainly, I can see where this would definitely potentially put Eden more in Kirk's power, perhaps, if he continues to play it out and the evidence actually is supporting it a little bit. But it'll also lead to some interesting textures in her relationship with Cruz, I think.
well, she might decide, you know what, I did all this once before with Kirk and Cruz, and didn't go well for me. I'm going to go the other way and just come clean to Cruz right away. So
Yeah. And I think this will definitely, we're already seeing very early days, a little bit of strain in the relationship between Cruz and Santana. I think there could be a lot more when this starts to play out, because if Eden does go to Cruz, then he's protecting her again, and there's all these forces against her, and there's just all sorts of things that are going to make that relationship a lot more intense.
Pearl shows up with Gina's sweatshirt. Haley drops her tray when she hears that Gina might be dead. Cruz says he's going to get a warrant to search Gina's hotel room for the typewriter that typed the note. Haley goes over there herself and finds the typewriter, just as the manager is about to let Cruz in. So I don't know if there's anywhere in there Haley could hide that they wouldn't find her. At the very least, if they find her in there, she might have to reveal that she's Gina's niece. And she really can't get rid of that typewriter unless she throws it out the window. So, yeah, I feel like Cruz is going to find that typewriter. Gina's going to have a reason to stay undercover. And but Haley may also find herself in trouble unless she climbs out the window without the typewriter and at least, doesn't get caught.
Yeah, I was trying to think, and it's sort of hard to, it's hard to know what the actual distance is between the lobby and this crummy hotel room Gina is living in. What Haley might be able to do in that timeline. Like, would there be time for her to stow it away in, a food cart or something in the hallway?
Well, I think she was hearing the key in the door right at the very end. So I think the manager and Cruz are right outside the door. But we do know it's a first floor motel room, because unless that was a different motel, because remember when that detective was hired to follow Gina, she saw him through that window and said he was peeking through the window. So. Brandon's psychiatrist tells everyone not to tell Brandon about Gina just yet. Too much trauma all at once, I guess, or at least wait to find out for sure. And also not to cut him off from Mason. So that's an interesting this family grouping. There was Cece was there, Rosa was there, I believe Ted was sitting there, Mary and Mark, I think, were sitting there. I don't know.
I think Cruz and Santana were there, were they not?
I think so, yeah. Santana tells Cece she wants everything in writing, and he seems a little put off by that.
Though I think that's smart on her part. Not that it did her a lot of good when Mason had it all in writing before.
So she and Cruz take Brandon and bring her to Santana's place, and he says goodnight. He'll pop by tomorrow, but they spend some time kissing at the front door, which I think Brandon must have spotted, so he must be aware that Cruz and Santana are dating at this point.
It'll be interesting to see how that tie with Mason will play out, if it does really at all. I mean, at the very least, it might be a reason for him to stay around the Capwell house, just because now he doesn't have a bedroom there, and I'm assuming Cece will want Brandon to visit him from time to time. I can't see Mason's presence adding a lot of tension between Cruz and Santana, because that's not really a romantic triangle. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what injecting him into that situation will look like.
Yeah, because I think every time Santana brings Brandon over to the Capwell house, Cruz will have a reason to come over and see. Mason has been investigating Mr. Sinclair, who I think we will recall was working secretly for Lionel, right? Augusta contemplates keeping one of the paintings for herself, and then decides she just wants the money. And then Mason tells Mary that she feels that Mr. Sinclair is trying to cheat Augusta, which is kind of weird because Lionel really doesn't want those paintings found. He's made it so financially, lucrative for Augusta to buy these paintings at 1.5, or sell these paintings at 1.5 times what they're worth. I just can't see how Mason has come to the conclusion that Sinclair is trying to cheat Augusta.
Yeah, and the other part of that is if we do take what Augusta says at face value, which I'm not actually sure we can, but that she just wants to get rid of the paintings and punish Lionel. And, if we remember that little sort of garage sale she had a few months ago where she was literally giving things away, it would seem like in some ways it doesn't matter if she gets rid of the paintings. Like that's her stated goal.
Mm-hmm.
And punishing Lionel. In some ways, with that goal, it would almost be better if she undersold them because she's really, shafting Lionel then.
Yeah, I guess it's probably been about a week since that story moved forward a bit, but I guess some things take the front burner and some things get pushed to the back. We haven't seen Warren for, I think, almost 2 weeks now. So.
Yeah, and his gambling addiction. So what is Warren living on? And, would potentially a broke Warren have to move back to the Lockridge house? That could be interesting.
Do we assume the paper's gone bust,
Yeah.
He said he wasn't going to be able to make the last payroll, and then we didn't really hear the follow-up to that, so. I would think Cece would say, "Oh, looks like that rag folded." And that is it for this episode. So we'll be back after we watch episode 422 of Santa Barbara. See you then.
Bye-bye.
But now there's a few more rags floating in the Pacific Ocean.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 422 of Santa Barbara. Originally aired Wednesday, March 26th, 1986. Dr. Mike Stevens tells Mark he's got that private practice job that he wanted. And Mike asks Mark if he has been feeling any numbness as they try to get to the heart of Mark's problems, which Mark hasn't exactly laid out properly for his doctor. The doctor kind of guesses, though, I think, and mentions some vascular issues could cause problems in other parts of the body, as well as psychological, and Mark insists it's not psychological. I think it is psychological.
And, I find it kind of amusing in a way. It's not an amusing problem, but to compare this whole business with Mark and how he's being very secretive about this problem and not even wanting to tell his doctor or name it. Compare that with Lionel and all he went through last year or the year before when he was working for the mattress company and basically had a broadcast about all of this issue and was just out in the open with it and actually gaining a fan base.
Mary then later tells Mark, let's say that again. Mark then later tells Mary that Dr. Stevens said they've been trying too hard and they should just cool it for a few weeks. Which leads Mary to have another shocked look on her face, as has been quite often lately.
So much for a honeymoon period in this marriage.
Eden comes home. She turns Kirk's picture to face. She turns Kirk's picture around so it's facing away from her bed, and then puts a pot of flowers in front of the picture frame.
I love that little touch. And it's facing the wrong way for the entire episode.
It's facing the camera, basically. Santana comes in and basically tells her to forget about Cruz. She and Mary have a little talk as well. Cruz comes in to tell her the evidence against her looks bad. Because, of course, there's powder burns on her clothes. Gina's blood is on her. Hers are the only fingerprints. And Eden says, well, of course, Gina was wearing gloves. But Cruz pretty much repeats everything Kirk said to her. So Eden says this is just like when Cece's plug was pulled, and I don't want you covering for me. I didn't want you covering for me then, and I don't want you covering for me now.
There's a lot of deja vu between these two situations with all the stuff Kirk's telling her and the way the whole situation is set up to make her look guilty. And Cruz trying to protect her.
And I guess having told Kirk not to try and bother with this case, Eden heads to the boathouse to find her own evidence. And ends up finding a wire attached to the banister going up to the loft. So the reason she's up there is because she hides briefly when Cruz and Santana pop by to check things out. And she hears Cruz saying that it's so weird that, if Gina had really wanted to kill Eden, she had a perfect vantage point from behind those barrels. So he finds it suspicious that she didn't.
So I feel like we're heading to a scenario where Eden doesn't really know who to trust. She certainly doesn't trust Kirk. But her dad is still very keen on her marriage to Kirk. So she's certainly, I don't think, going to confide in him at this point. But she's also got this estrangement from Cruz because he's married to Santana. And Santana, of course, has come in and reinforced that. So I think that Eden's going to be doing her own investigation for a while. And I feel like we're heading to a situation where she'll have done all this investigating, put herself in some sort of danger, and everyone else is going to have to catch up really quickly.
Haley climbs out the window, and Cruz finds the typewriter on the bed. So Haley, when we saw Haley trying to open the window, she was still holding the typewriter, but I guess it was just too heavy for her to get out. But Cruz finds it suspicious the typewriter would be there on the bed and wonders if someone planted it. The landlord points out that the notes he'd slipped under Gina's door have been put on the desk by someone. So Cruz wonders if the windows could have been jimmied from outside, but I think he will pretty soon conclude that someone else has a key. The motel manager says that a girl has called for Gina several times, so that's another little clue that Cruz has. Then Cece is upset that Haley wasn't there when Eden returned home this morning. And Ted tries to tell Dad, she probably had a good reason. Dan Silvers shows up at the Capwell house and says he might have some information about Gina Capwell, and he shows Cruz and the gang some Polaroids that may mean that a shark has gotten her. And Cruz says, I've got the lab looking at the strips cut out of Gina's sweatshirt to see if they could have been made by a shark's mouth. But I think the lab guys will immediately say, someone took a knife to this. Haley is very upset that no one cares that Gina might be dead. And then Kirk reveals that he knows that Gina is her aunt, and she will owe him one in order for him to keep her secret. Haley tells Cruz that she used to chat with Gina quite a bit when she sneaked him in to see Brandon, and she doesn't think Gina could have killed anyone. But she does not reveal to Cruz that Gina is her aunt.
I feel like she was making the first tentative steps to perhaps revealing that, because, with Kirk kind of coming down on her too, it seems like the only way to really deal with Kirk is to not give him secrets to hold over you as leverage. And I felt like that was maybe something Haley was coming to realize, at least with this little bit of an opening to Cruz.
Well, Kirk was hiding behind a pillar during that exchange, and I'm sure he's going to pull the same thing he does with Eden and say, you better not tell Cruz that you are Gina's niece. You'll be arrested as an accessory to murder. Gina tells Angel she has her revenge all planned out. This is actually kind of interesting. So Gina has a plan against Kirk this time. Now that we know Gina's plans, have been elaborate in the past, like her plan to frame Eden. So, and she's got a little costume all set up for this. So I'm actually kind of excited to see what Gina's plan to get Kirk will be. And, as is usual with Gina's plans, they somehow go awry. So will Gina actually get the drop on Kirk, or will the opposite happen?
Or will she get distracted by the whole Santana situation, because Angel does mention that to her as well. That, oh, by the way, Cruz and Santana are married.
Yeah, that might be her higher priority.
Yeah.
Gina pulls a knife on Angel when he says that he's been trying to stay clean and, suggests maybe he doesn't want to harbor her anymore. Gina sends him to her hotel room to get her checkbook, and who should he run into but Cruz? And luckily Cruz thinks that the police station sent him over there because he had left a message for Angel to come and see him about that job. So Angel plays along, says, yeah, I didn't get that job, but Miss Wainwright has a couple others that look promising. So Santana shows up there, and that's when Angel overhears that Santana and Cruz are married, and that Brandon is living with them, which he then tells Gina later. Angel tries to get Mark to give him some antibiotics for his old injury, but this was actually quite a realistic scene, because I've seen this played out when I've been in emergency. Guy shows up needing pain pills for his old injury. This injury, Mark knows immediately, has happened so long ago, there's no way Angel's still in pain. He assumes immediately Angel wants some painkillers. But in fact, Angel is trying to backhandedly get some antibiotics for Gina. So Mark kind of blows him off, is probably looking for painkillers. But luckily for Angel, Mary comes in and puts down Eden's antibiotics, saying, well, Kirk got these from the same pharmacy that she gets her birth control pills from, and she doesn't trust them. So I need a new prescription for antibiotics for Eden. And while Mark is writing that for Mary, Angel just takes Eden's antibiotics to give to Gina. It was a pretty clever little way of getting him those pills. Gina says she plans to go to the memorial service. Now, when I was rereading that, I thought, wait a minute, memorial service. It was, I don't know if it's for Gina or if they're having one for the baby. I think Haley had managed to talk the Capwells into it. Yeah, no, that's right, because when Haley was so angry with Ted and Cece for not really caring that Gina was dead, Cece did kind of conclude, yeah, you know what, for the papers, we should actually hold a memorial service. And so now Gina plans to go to that memorial service, and she says, Kirk better be there. So I think that may be where she plans to pull something on Kirk. So that will be interesting to see what her plan is. And of course, originally her plan can't have included a memorial service. So I'm wondering what, how she'll twist her plan to suit the memorial service. Will it be like Marcello's plan to blow up the Capwell yacht suddenly sees him planting nitroglycerin in the tunnels, a completely different plan, or we will see. So we'll see if Gina shows up in that disguise in a way that makes sense for what she's doing.
I thought it was interesting, too, in this episode when they're talking about what happened to Eden, and Gina finds out for the first time, I think from Angel, that Eden had lost her baby. She says, oh, I thought she might be pregnant, and then she says, oh, that Kirk is a monster. So I think there's really no doubt in this, to me, that at this stage of the game anyway, Kirk is by far the bigger villain than Gina at this point.
And that's really the only way you can keep Gina on the show for another 8 years, is by constantly having worse villains that make her look good by comparison, and maybe give her an out from some of her crimes. Well, hopefully, they keep saying don't tell Brandon, but they're also planning a memorial service, so these two things are going to conflict very soon. Hopefully we'll see the memorial service today. But,
and they've
you
told
never know.
everyone else about this secret marriage. So
But don't tell Brandon.
I'm sure Brandon will figure it out soon.
They've told everyone not to tell Brandon, so maybe they forgot to tell Haley. That's it for episode 422. We'll be back after we've seen the Thursday episode, number 423. See you then.
Bye-bye.
He's qualified, he's dignified, he's desperate.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 423 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, March 27th, 1986. And before we get into the episode, we saw Jed Allen on an episode of Adam 12 as a police officer. And then 2 nights ago, when we were doing our weekly St. Elsewhere viewing, we saw Sydney Penny, age 12, who will be showing up in about 8 years as B.J. Walker on Santa Barbara. And her father was played by Robert Hogan, who was best known as Vince McKinnon from Another World. A massive storm hits Santa Barbara. It's always fun when they have weather events. Dylan shows up at the Capwell mansion looking for Kelly. And he has a very nice talk with Cece, and that Cece gets in quite a lot of jabs. Cece tells him to stay away from Kelly. He says, I've seen cheap hustlers before. And Dylan says, I'm not after her money. I could tell you stories about your little princess. That's a good way to endear himself into Cece's heart, isn't it?
It's a very different approach than Kirk took, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's really nasty to Cece, and Cece's really nasty to him. But one of them clearly has power over the other. So, I think Cece can't wait to get Dylan out of the casino project.
And that makes me think even more that, because Dylan is actually standing up to Cece, there must be a reason, besides being Dylan, why he's not afraid of Cece. And that makes me wonder if he's been kind of taking some of the money from the casino for himself or something like that.
On the way out of the door, Dylan knocks over Courtney, who was with Pearl, and doesn't even apologize. And Pearl says, I hope he's heading for the nearest golf course. Because, of course, there is a lightning storm. Cece tells Kelly, sometimes a girl can lead on a man without realizing it, which Kelly is very offended by. Kelly finds out from Mr. Snyder that all of Nick's books have been stolen from the warehouse. Courtney wonders where Madeline is. This is an interesting thing. This is like 2 times in a row where Courtney's walked into a room and wonders where Madeline has gone. So I feel like Madeline is up to something, even though she's not in this episode. Something off screen. She's maybe on a mission for Grant, doing something.
And truthfully, we haven't really seen much of her lately.
No, it seems like it's been a while since we've seen her. Cece says that she's unlikely to show up to this, memorial service for Gina. Courtney presents Pearl to Cece as his new butler to replace Philip. So that's an interesting thing I clearly hadn't remembered at all from all those years ago. And even just the reference to Philip, having won the lottery or whatever it was a couple of episodes ago. Didn't realize that was actually a setup for Pearl becoming the Capwell butler. So that's kind of funny. Pearl responds very flippantly to all of Cece's questions. Cece still seems to give him a lot of leeway, though, in this interview. Maybe because Courtney brought him in. But he doesn't seem necessarily impressed. Then after the questioning, Pearl ropes Ted into some role-playing and pretends to announce Mr. What does he call him? He calls him by the wrong name. He calls him Edward or something.
Yeah.
And then he says, no, it's Ted's short for Theodore. So he reannounces him as Theodore. And offers them a drink. Anyway, Cece cuts it all short by saying, well, we need to get you an outfit. You're going to chauffeur us to the memorial service. So he's been hired as a chauffeur at the very least, if not a butler. So Courtney later asks him, I thought you said you had some money socked away. Why do you need this job? He goes, oh, yeah, research. I might write a book or a play.
Yeah, I've actually been wondering myself why Pearl is doing this, since he obviously has a much more highfalutin background than the one he's portraying on Santa Barbara. So maybe he's telling you the truth. Maybe he is truly writing a book or doing research or something like that.
Yeah, could be. Ted is working on connecting up the stereo equipment that he will use at the memorial service, and he carries it out later, so I think they bring it to the church, but I don't necessarily recall any music or anything at the church. Maybe there was a PA system set up, but mostly the church would have a PA, so maybe it's for maybe it's for the reception after. But anyway, as he is, connecting up the cables and things, he triggers some feedback, and Eden hears the feedback and realizes that is the sound that she heard while she was struggling with with Gina. And Eden has taken some of the cable that she found in the boathouse and shows it to Ted, and he says, oh yeah, that's just standard stereo cable. So I think Eden is putting together, without the help of crews or any Santa Barbara police officers, that someone had a speaker system hooked up and was maybe standing there with a microphone while Gina was attacking her. And in the flashback, maybe it was just a better quality episode, but you could actually hear Gina's dialogue a little bit better, what she says to Eden. In addition to saying he's going to kill us both now, I finally heard her say, we've got to get under cover, which I hadn't heard the first time or during the other times it's flashed back. So, at the memorial service, Reverend Sutter asks for some good stories about Gina, but nobody has any. Mason has a lot of hilarious comments, both before the rest of the family arrive and after, about the dearth of feel-good stories about Gina. But of course, Haley has come with Ted, and Haley eventually gets the ball rolling by saying that she knows very well that Gina loved her son, Brandon. And she, says something, and this prompts Mason to say one nice story about Gina that he recalls. And then Eden gets up and tells us one nice story about Eden and Gina, and then so does Cece. Cece actually remembers the night before they were married that he found Gina in the middle of the night polishing the silverware, so everything would be perfect. So this is actually kind of, a nice little twist on the memorial service that no one wanted to go to. What's Gina been doing in this episode? Well, the first thing she does is send a big bouquet of flowers to the Capwell mansion with her condolences, and she charges it to Cece. Angel finds that she has found his gun, and he takes it from her, and as he's putting it in the closet, she shoves him in, grabs the gun, and locks him in. And she has her wig on, and she goes to the memorial service. But, as I said about Gina's plans, maybe not all going the way she thought, because of the rain, she's actually got a scarf around her head. So this wig that she's, spent all week, modeling, is actually covered the entire time. And she ends up sitting in the back row watching the whole memorial service. And it's a set, so it's very small. There are only like 6 rows of chairs. But they managed to light it in a way that it's believable that no one could see her face. But no one actually notices her except Kelly, who in between the various speakers looks back because she's trying to figure out who that lady is in the back row. So, and I don't know if this is the same church that Joe and Kelly got married in. It seems smaller somehow, but maybe that's just because during the wedding all the seats were full of extras and they may have placed them slightly differently.
But Gina seems very moved by the positive stories about her, and especially when Eden gets up and gives hers. And of course, Eden has surprised her family by even going, and of course by offering up such a positive story, because of course she hasn't told anyone that Gina actually probably saved her life rather than tried to take it. So I think there is I doubt if it'll last much beyond this storyline, if it lasts through that at all, but there is almost a little bit of a bond at this point between Eden and Gina.
Mm-hmm. It may be that Eden will discover Gina at some point and maybe, call her over and say, I think Kirk is the one who tried to kill us. Then maybe they'll band together against Kirk.
Well, we can hope something like that comes up.
Mm-hmm. Kelly eventually gets too suspicious and decides to come to the back. She walks towards the back of the church to try to ask the lady who she is, but luckily the storm knocks the power out just at that time, and by the time the Reverend has lit a candle, Gina has made it out of the church. They are distracted from that by a man showing up with a note for Kelly. And it says, if you want your books back, go where you're told. My messenger will be your guide. Of course, we all suspect that note was from Dylan. And the messenger brings Kelly to Dylan. And I wasn't sure if that was his office at the casino or his apartment. Because it was very closely filmed.
Felt like they were surrounded by books.
Yes, the books were piled everywhere. But there was like one little vase in the back. I thought, I don't know if that's the office or not, because that's quite a trip out. And why would he bring all the books? He would have had to ferry all those books to the casino, so they're probably in his apartment. He shows her all the books to underscore what a loser Nick is. She ends up throwing a book at him, and as he's leaving, and he turns around at that, and she says that she hates him. And he decides that this is the best time to kiss her. And to my dismay, she appears to let him do that for a number of seconds. I'm a bit worried that Miss Kelly Capwell has once again fallen for the dubious charms of Dylan Hartley.
That was my impression. I just start playing bubble shooter as soon as Dylan comes on, so I try not to watch these scenes too carefully. I mean, he does, I think, make a valid point, actually, to Kelly when he says, if you loved Nick that much, why are you still not married to him, after all of this? And I think, I think it is fair to say that, as much as she's tried to help Nick and as much as she's professed her love to him, I think there is some ambivalence there on her part still.
But this, when Dylan leaves, she says, oh my God. But I wonder if this will actually push her to say, let's just get married now. And as soon as the memorial service clears out, she and Nick pop in and Reverend Sutton marries them.
Yeah. I mean, and, depending on where they go with Dylan's storyline, maybe all of this is fodder if he does become the next sort of whodunit murder victim. Or maybe we see this ratchet up tension between him and Nick.
I fear like Nick may find out about the books and that's not going to go well. Well, maybe if Kelly does push a wedding tomorrow, Dylan will show up and say, oh, she bought all those books just at the wrong time. And Nick will call the wedding off at the altar, maybe.
Yeah.
Just kind of different from the way the weddings usually in soap operas get interrupted. He bought all your books is probably one of the rarer lines that's been said to stop a wedding.
I think
it's usually, I'm really alive.
Yeah, exactly. Or if it's Days of Our Lives,
he's his twin brother.
Tear off a mask or something.
You're marrying the wrong twin.
But I think with this storyline, what makes it interesting to me, and I know that I'm obviously bringing my own biases into this, but I don't see either of these men actually as a good match for Kelly. So, I hate Dylan with a passion, but I'm kind of ambivalent about Nick as well.
I mean, he has gotten. Well, maybe it was boring from the beginning, but we wanted Kelly to be happy, but he's definitely grown into a dud, for sure.
Yeah, so, to me, I kind of feel like it would be just as well if they wrapped up the Hartley brothers somehow and Kelly got to move on to a new storyline.
Now, at several points during the episode, people are talking about Kirk and wonder if he's coming to their memorial, etc., and we don't really see him around, or we don't know where he is. But once everyone's at the memorial service, we see he is wherever he was in the morning. He's now at the Capwell mansion, and he lights a candle as the power goes out, and we see him wandering around. He seems to be uneasy. I don't know if he thinks there's something wrong at the mansion. He ends up getting a flashlight, and Snoop just wandering around downstairs as if he's looking for something. Then the flashlight goes out, and he switches back to the candle, and then he wanders upstairs, and then he eventually hears water running in Eden's bedroom. And he walks into Eden's bedroom, and he hears water from the bathroom, and he opens the door, and there's water spilling over the side of the bathtub. And under the water is Gina, wearing the clothes she wore that day in the boathouse, pretending to be dead.
And I think this is actually a play on a really old movie, which I can't remember what it was called.
It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know what it is.
I know they did a take on it many, many years ago. I actually remember watching this episode of a kid of Charlie's Angels, where they did something similar.
Oh.
But I think it was a tribute to the old movie. I can't remember. But
interesting. I didn't catch that then, and I didn't catch it now. So.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm assuming perhaps this will send Kirk even farther around the bend if he survives the encounter with Gina, which I suspect he will.
One thing I wonder is she wearing the wig under the water because it's isn't necessary if she's pretending to be herself? So was the wig ever necessary at all?
Yeah, the logistics of this coming out of this scene will be quite interesting.
Well, I'm wondering what Gina's plan is. I mean, she certainly stunned him. She can't have the gun under the water because it would be waterlogged. But she has the gun as part of her plan. So will she then come up and, she's secretly got a tape recorder running and she thinks he'll be so befuddled from the shock that he'll spill everything? I don't know. I don't know what her plan could be. There must be more to it than just, giving him a shock. So, well, I'm very excited to see that Friday episode. And if it's what I remember, it's going to be a doozy. So we will be, in about 2 minutes, watching episode 424. And then we'll do a commentary in the morning. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I've seen cheap hustlers before, and I know how to handle fortune hunters.
I'm not after Kelly's money.
You're not fit to get anything else of hers. You're not good enough.
And my brother is?
Yes, he is.
Oh, well, I've got news for you. Your daughter isn't as picky as her old man. No, I can tell you stories about your little princess that would...
I think you've said enough, Mr. Hartley.
But what's with him?
Oh, no, I just hope he's headed for the nearest golf course.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 424 last night. Originally aired Friday, March 28, 1986. Ted says he's disgusted with the way the family Capwell operates. He says the only reason Gina was in Santa Barbara was because Cece invited her. Haley leaves the memorial service, and shortly afterward, Ted storms out as well.
And actually, that whole scene, I think we see a lot of flashbacks in this scene where Ted is thinking about a lot of the conflicts in the family.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of
between Mason, there's a lot of scenes between Mason and Cece that he thinks about.
Yeah, and I kind of get a little bit of a sense of what's going on in his head. And one of the things those little flashback scenes actually highlighted for me was the fact that Sophia's not at this memorial, because there are a few that have her in it of those flashbacks. And it occurred to me that she would have been a really good person to have had there, because she is fairly good at smoothing things over and that. So it kind of just pointed out the loss of her in these scenes to me.
Kirk sees... that makes me think. Brandon still doesn't know, right? They're having this memorial service. Brandon doesn't even know his mother's dead. Kirk sees Gina under the water in Eden's bedroom and promptly has a heart attack. Gina rises from the water and points an accusing finger at him as Kirk collapses. I wonder if that's from that movie that you mentioned too. It's that Jacques finger. Gina takes the gun from beside the bathtub, where she also has her tape recorder. So we had guessed correctly. She was planning to get Kirk to confess on tape. She succeeds in getting Kirk to confess to everything while he is begging to be taken to the hospital. But Gina does not at first believe that he is having a heart attack. Madeline knocks on the door at one point, thinking she's not the only one in the house, but Gina keeps quiet, and Kirk, I guess, doesn't moan for a few seconds, and then Gina watches Madeline drive away out of the window and says, I wonder who that is. Eventually, Gina realizes Kirk is having a heart attack and starts taking him down the stairs, and Haley comes home and is shocked to find Aunt Gina is alive. They get... Gina mentions that the phones have died, so they can't call an ambulance. They have to take him to the hospital themselves. They get Kirk into the car, and Ted runs by at that point, which wouldn't be a problem, except Gina realizes she put down the gun at the bottom of the stairs, and she has to send Haley back in to get the gun. And, of course, Ted wants to chat with Haley about everything, and... he apologizes for everything Capwell, and Haley's like, I'm kind of tired, really gotta get to bed. And finally Ted leaves so she can grab the gun and run back outside. Is it Kirk's car, I wonder, that they're in?
Yeah, it must be. That's a really good point. Which, I don't know, maybe he has several cars, though, because remember, he got that flashy car from... as a present so many episodes ago, which I would think would be very, very easy to spot. So
it would probably be in the garage, and this one was parked right in front of the garage door. So, well, whoever's car it is, they definitely plan to leave it at the hospital. As they drive to the hospital, Haley's wonders, were you planning to kill Kirk with this gun? But Gina says, no, just to get this confession that I have on tape. And she's got that tape recorder on the dashboard. At the hospital, Gina does not want to reveal herself just yet. In fact, back at the house, she told Haley, don't tell Ted I'm alive. So Haley helps Gina move Kirk into the driver's seat of the car, and they put his head down on the horn to alert the emergency room staff. So Kirk has been having this heart attack for quite a long time. So that's probably not the best thing when you're having a heart attack. What Gina doesn't realize is that while they were moving him into the driver's seat, Kirk managed to grab the tape recorder. So Gina and Haley, I believe, will leave at the end of the episode. Leave Kirk in the car, not realizing that he has the tape recorder.
Yeah, I was trying to think how he'd gotten it. If maybe I almost wondered if they had put it there on purpose so that he'd be found with the tape recorder. But it does seem more likely that he managed to get it. And, of course, then all of Gina's efforts will be in vain. I was really surprised that he had a heart attack. And, in fact, for most of the episode, I assumed he was faking it because we never heard any indication at all that Kirk had any sort of health problems this way.
Yeah, I wonder if, they showed him wandering around the mausoleum all of last episode, all worked up, just to sort of give some more credence to this, what kind of a state he might have been in. But yeah, it's a bit of a surprise.
Yeah. Now, I imagine if he survives it, which I'm assuming he will, that as with all the other injuries we've seen on this show involving mentally unstable men, so, for example, Peter's aneurysm and whatever's going on with Mark, I don't think this will be a change for the better for Kirk. And so he's already been on a long downward slide. I think this will make him go even further down that road. So we'll see.
Mason encounters Mary at Buzz's. She tells him that Mark is working late at the hospital. Mason offers to buy her dinner, but she says she's just going to have leftovers. And Mason says it's a sad day when a man is turned down in favor of leftovers. Later, Mason returns to Buzz's and finds Mary crying there. She says Mark is not at the hospital, and she doesn't know where he is, I guess. So I thought we were going to have, Mark being the doctor that treats Kirk. I thought that was the whole point of Mary saying at the beginning of the episode, Mark's at the hospital, but I guess not.
I guess he still could be, but then it begs the question of where is he? Because, when we've seen Mark run off in the past, it's often been to a bar, so we would actually expect he would be at Buzz's.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that Mary would stop off at Buzz's before going home to eat leftovers. I don't know if she drinks necessarily, but I guess after a shift at the clinic, which isn't a bad area. Buzz's is at the waterfront, which tends to be a bad area in some towns. Makes sense that might be a reasonable stopover to decompress or something. Mason's art expert reveals that Lionel's paintings are forgeries. And Mason is very frantic during this meeting as he pulls one painting after another out of his bag, only to be told that the canvas is about 10 years old. And Mason being Mason, he quickly finds a way to turn lemons into lemonade. He tells Cece that he thinks he can get Augusta to sell those paintings. And the best part is, neither Lionel nor Augusta will know that they've been sold to Cece until it's all over. Cece thinks this is a great idea, and after some haggling agrees to give Mason a 25% commission. So not only are all of Cece's paintings that he owns forgeries done by Elizabeth Beale, but he will soon own another collection of Lionel's that are also all forgeries done by Elizabeth Beale.
And I was thinking through this, they actually must be pretty shoddy forgeries, because this other expert just kind of scraped away at them a little bit and said, oh yeah, no, these aren't real. So.
Well, I mean, they did say that the brushstrokes were amazing. It was just that the canvas, I guess, was clearly too new.
Now, I'm wondering if at some point down the road, because I'm always trying to think how these great plans are going to be kind of sent sideways, and I'm wondering if perhaps Augusta will be very sentimental and not want to sell them or something like that.
Well, I'm thinking, if it goes through, Cece and Augusta won't know there was anything wrong. Cece will happily give Mason a ton of money and Augusta a ton of money. Augusta will happily have her money. Lionel will be happy that A, the forgeries weren't found out, and B, kind of happy that Cece's the one who paid the money for them. And Mason can't really hold this over Lionel too much to try and get something else out of him, because Lionel will say, well, Cece is not going to be happy that you cheated him out of that commission knowing they were fake. So they're kind of all stuck in a weird stalemate. I wonder if those paintings are just going to go up on the wall and Mason will keep quiet, or maybe he'll needle Lionel a little bit about it for something, but he can't really go too far.
I would actually like to see this one go ahead as planned. Just because it would be a stalemate, but I think what Mason would get out of it, apart from his 25% commission, would be just the satisfaction of knowing, I think, whenever he walked into the foyer, that those paintings were fake.
Yeah, he makes some snarky comment every time he walks by.
Yeah.
Ted, back at the house, Ted continues on in the same vein that he was at the memorial service, and tells people he's leaving. He's disgusted with the whole Capwell way. Madeline complains about having to drive herself due to the woefully understaffed Capwell house. Courtney is happy to reveal that they have a new chauffeur, and Pearl reveals himself, much to Madeline's dismay. Madeline has Pearl drive her to 416 Los Altas, and insists that he wait outside for her, even though he says he has something he can do for the next couple hours. She tells Pearl that back in New York, she'd make Lenny circle a block for hours. So as soon as she's out of the car, Pearl uses the car phone to invite Julia to join him and also orders a pizza. Julia arrives and says, "Why are you taking a job as a chauffeur? And butler," he adds. Can you imagine spending the rest of your life saluting C.C. Capwell? Julia then changes the topic. She says that he gets a gleam in his eye whenever he's around Courtney. And he says, "When they're pretty, I gleam. I've been known to gleam for you." Julia says, "You're not supposed to gleam at your attorney." Pearl says, "It's Friday night. You should be looking for love, too." And he says, she must have really gotten burned. Then Madeline gets in and assumes Julia is a prostitute. As Julia gets out of the car, she tells Madeline perhaps they'll meet again on Madeline's favorite corner. And Madeline tells Pearl to toss the pizza out the window because of the smell of garlic, and instead he rolls up the divider. Mm-hmm. So I think we have some potential for wacky scenes between Pearl and Madeline as Pearl chauffeurs her around the town, and she finds things to insult about the Capwells and Pearl and possibly Santa Barbara itself.
I also think that her snobbery in this could be her undoing, because Pearl is getting a first-hand look at all the places she mysteriously goes to and for how long she's there.
Mm-hmm. You might start putting things together. I haven't Googled 416 Los Altos to see if it's a real place or what's there, but maybe I'll do that in between episodes. And that is it for week 87. So we are at the end of March. I think Monday will be March 31st. So in the real world, I was in my last week of school and trying to figure out how I was going to have to up all of my grades by taking those finals, because I had spent far too much of my first semester away from home watching Santa Barbara and Another World and not attending classes. I do remember one time my statistics class, which I found surprisingly difficult since I was so good at math and other areas of math. We had about 450 people in that introductory statistics class. It was a huge class. One time I went down to turn in a paper that was the week's homework at the end of the class, as we did every week, and suddenly Professor Stevens saw me coming down and said, "Misha, Misha, Misha." And I thought, how the heck does he know who I am? 450 people he'd never spoken to me before. So it was kind of weird.
Yeah. And did you see them all when you took the class again the next year? The same people?
When I took the class again the next year, I had a different professor. I think it was Maggie Benson who taught at that time. And she did teach it slightly differently, which I think I ended up getting a C instead of I don't know if I failed it or got a D, but I did very poorly in the first time around. Which wasn't really the first time, because I'd taken statistics at Okanagan College last year, and had only taken it again because the transfer credit for that course, I guess, was not of a high enough level. So I had to take a third-year statistics course at SFU.
And did you not, in later years, end up narrating a book on statistics?
I may have done that, yes. Still didn't mean I understood any of it. This episode had some credits, and there are 2 changes to people's names. Gina Gallego is now billed as Santana Andrade Castillo. And the mystery of Madeline's full name is revealed in the credits. Terry Davis is credited as Madeline Capwell Laurent. So, Mr. Laurent presumably will be showing up at some point to reveal what kind of a person would marry Madeline Capwell. And art expert was Harold Harris, minister James Newell, and angel, of course, is Bernard White. And that's it for week 87. I guess we got to do a Kirk Cranston trauma tracker now that his heart has gone from pink to red. And we've got some fun things coming up with Kirk, if I remember correctly. So
I'm assuming that means he's not dead.
That's a Weekend at Bernie's style. So we'll be back next, 2 weeks for week 88, and I am about to edit this episode and put it online because it's Saturday, June 18th. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Next week, stay tuned for our Celebrity Spotlight on Alejandro Rey. Bye.
Bye.
I think my heart just about stopped when I realized that your car was involved in that accident.
Kirk,
Oh, Gina, you just about gave me a heart attack.
don't worry about it, since you don't have a heart.
I can't hear you until you're down on your knees. That's right, that's better.
It's time once again to revisit the Kirk Cranston trauma tracker. Unfortunately, poor Kirk has more than a broken heart today. He spends the entire episode having a heart attack. So I think we're going to have to upgrade this problem area here. There we go. It seems like his heart grew 3 sizes that day, but not in the good way. So we will keep you updated on Kirk's heart attack situation. Perhaps we can go down 1 level, or perhaps it will get worse. Who knows? We will return when Kirk Cranston suffers some more trauma. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, Gina. It's been stormy. Sad day when a man is turned down in favor of leftovers.